How Humanity's Compassion Rewrote Galactic Law. The planet Lumina hung in the void like a sapphire jewel, its azure oceans and emerald continents untouched by the industrial scars that marked so many worlds across the galaxy. Captain Elena Reyes stood on the observation deck of the UNSS Horizon, her breath catching as she watched the primitive sailing vessels crawling across the planet's vast oceans, visible even from orbit through the ship's advanced imaging systems. "They're beautiful," she whispered, more to herself than to Dr. Kaito Nakamura, the xenoanthropologist who stood beside her. "The Luminians have achieved roughly equivalent development to Earth's late 18th century, Kaito said, his voice tinged with the reverence that came from discovering something precious and rare. "They've mastered sailing, basic metallurgy, and have rudimentary understanding of mathematics and astronomy, but they have no concept of space travel, let alone that they're being observed." The discovery of Lumina had sent ripples of excitement through the United Earth government. In the 2 centuries since humanity had ventured beyond their solar system, they had encountered dozens of alien civilizations, most advanced, some hostile, others indifferent. But finding a pre-industrial species was unprecedented. The Luminians, with their 4 arms, iridescent skin, and complex social structures centered around their relationship with the tides, represented a unique opportunity for study. "The Council has received our preliminary report," Admiral Zhang announced as he entered the observation deck, his weathered face grave. "They've convened an emergency session." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The Galactic Cooperative Council, an alliance of 17 advanced species that governed interstellar relations, was notoriously conservative in their approach to developing civilizations. "Let me guess," she said, turning away from the viewport. "Non-interference directive." Zhang nodded grimly. "Absolute quarantine. No contact, no intervention, no exceptions." "But sir," Kaito protested, "we've detected signs of geological instability on the northern continent. Our models predict a catastrophic seismic event within the next solar cycle. Millions could die." "The Council's position is clear," Zhang replied, his voice hardening. "Natural disasters are part of evolutionary development. Intervention would contaminate their natural progression." Elena's hands clenched into fists. "So we just watch them die." "Those are our orders, Captain," Zhang said, though the slight tremor in his voice betrayed his own discomfort. "Prepare the horizon for departure. We leave Luminian orbit in 48 hours. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The faces of the Luminians haunted her, their cities built on coastal plains directly in the path of the tsunami that would follow the impending earthquake. Their technology would give them no warning, no chance to evacuate. Her quarters door chimed at 200 hours. "Enter," she called, knowing who it would be. Kaito stepped inside, followed by Chief Engineer Malik Okafor and Dr. Sophia Chen, the ship's exobiologist. Their expressions told her everything. "You're thinking what I'm thinking," Elena said. "It wasn't a question." "The Council is wrong," Sophia stated flatly. "Their non-interference directive was designed to prevent cultural contamination, not to sentence innocent beings to death when we have the power to help." Malik nodded, his massive frame seeming too large for Elena's quarters. "I've been running simulations. We could deploy seismic stabilizers at key points along the fault line. Minimal footprint, maximum effect." "It would be a direct violation of Council law," Elena reminded them, though her heart raced with possibility. "We'd risk our commissions, possibly imprisonment. Earth could face sanctions." "Some things are worth the risk, Captain," Kaito said quietly. "If we do nothing, how do we call ourselves human anymore?" Elena looked at each of their faces, determined, principled, afraid but resolute. She thought of Earth's own history, of times when following orders had led to atrocity, and of the courage it took to stand against injustice. "We'll need a plan," she said finally. one that helps the Luminians without revealing our existence, and will need volunteers who understand the risks. By morning they had both. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. A small team would remain behind when the Horizon departed, using a cloaked shuttle to reach the planet's surface. They would deploy the seismic stabilizers under cover of darkness, establish an observation post in the mountains, and monitor the situation until the Horizon could accidentally return to the system 6 months later. Elena had expected perhaps a dozen volunteers, 73 crew members, nearly a third of the Horizon's complement, stepped forward. "I can't order any of you to do this," Elena told the assembled volunteers in Cargo Bay 3. "What we're planning violates everything the Council stands for. If we're discovered, the consequences will be severe." "With respect, Captain," Lieutenant Amara Osai said, "most of us joined the Exploration Corps to help people, not to watch them die because of politics." In the end, Elena selected a team of 12 specialists, including herself, Kaido, Malik, and Sophia. Admiral Zhang was deliberately kept in the dark, plausible deniability if the operation was discovered. The day the Horizon departed, the shuttle Firefly detached from its underbelly, its experimental cloaking technology rendering it invisible to both the ship's sensors and the Council monitoring satellites in high orbit. "Good luck, Firefly," came Zhang's voice over the comm. "I don't know what you think you're doing, and I don't want to know. Just come home safe." Elena exchanged glances with her crew. The Admiral knew or suspected, but was choosing to look the other way. It was all the blessing they could hope for. "Acknowledged, Horizon," she replied. "See you in 6 months." The descent to Lumina was tense but uneventful. They established their base in a mountain cave overlooking the largest Luminian city on the northern continent. The seismic stabilizers were deployed over 3 nights of careful, clandestine work. "Now we wait," Malik said as they activated the final device, "and hope the Council doesn't decide to check up on this sector." The stabilizers worked, perhaps too well. The massive earthquake that should have devastated the northern continent was reduced to a series of minor tremors, but the team's relief was short-lived. On their 23rd day on Lumina, Sophia made a disturbing discovery. "They're sick," she announced, bursting into the command center of their makeshift base. "The Luminians in the coastal city. I've detected an outbreak of some kind of pathogen." Kaido's analysis was grim. "It appears to be a waterborne bacterium, similar to cholera. Their primitive sanitation systems can't contain it. At the current infection rate, we're looking at thousands dead within weeks." "We can't intervene again," Elena said, though the words tasted bitter. The stabilizers were one thing, invisible, untraceable, but medical intervention would mean direct contact. "Not necessarily," Sophia argued. "We have nanofiltration technology. We could deploy it in their water sources. They'd never know." The debate raged for hours. In the end, they compromised. They would deploy the filters but take extraordinary precautions to avoid detection. But fate had other plans. During the deployment, a young Luminian child stumbled upon Malik and Sophia as they worked at a communal well. The child's cries alerted others. In the confusion that followed, Sophia was injured, and Malik made the split-second decision to reveal himself rather than harm the curious Luminians who had discovered them. "I had no choice, Captain," Malik reported later, his voice tight with stress. "They've seen us now. There's no going back." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. "Then we adapt. If we can't hide, we help openly, but carefully. We introduce ourselves as travelers from a distant land, not the stars. We teach them about disease prevention, clean water, basic medicine." "It's a massive violation of the Directive," Kaido warned. "The Directive be damned," Elena replied. "We crossed that line when we decided to stay." What began as a medical intervention evolved into something more profound. The Luminians proved to be remarkably adaptable and quick to learn. Their four-armed physiology gave them natural advantages in crafting and building, and their tide-based spiritual beliefs predisposed them to accept new ideas that came in waves of knowledge. Elena established strict boundaries: no advanced technology, no mention of space or other worlds, nothing beyond what the Luminians could reasonably develop themselves within a generation. But even with these limitations, the changes were dramatic. Within 3 months, the coastal city had implemented basic sanitation systems, reducing disease rates by over 70%. They had improved their agricultural techniques, strengthened their buildings against future earthquakes, and begun experimenting with steam power based on principles Malik had suggested to their most innovative thinkers. "They're advancing decades in months," Kaito marveled as they watched a Luminian engineer demonstrate a primitive steam engine to an excited crowd. "Their collaborative social structure means innovation spread rapidly. One discovery builds immediately upon another." "Is that a problem?" Elena asked, noting his concerned tone. "It could be. The Council's directive exists for a reason. Societies need time to adapt culturally and ethically to technological advancement. Earth's history is full of examples where technology outpaced wisdom, with catastrophic results." Elena watched as the Luminians celebrated their new invention. Their 4 arms raised in a gesture they had learned meant friendship and gratitude toward the strange visitors who had brought such changes to their world. "We'll be careful," she promised. "Guide them toward cooperation rather than competition, emphasize sustainability and balance." But time was running out. The horizon would return in less than 2 months, and with it would come questions that couldn't be easily answered, especially when the Council inevitably discovered how dramatically the Luminians had advanced. The horizon returned to find not a primitive pre-industrial society, but a rapidly developing civilization in the early stages of an industrial revolution, one taking a remarkably different path than Earth's had. Clean energy, sustainable practices, and cooperative economics formed the foundation of Luminian development, rather than the fossil fuels and cutthroat capitalism that had marked humanity's own industrial age. Admiral Zhang was furious and terrified. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded when Elena and her team returned to the ship. "The Council is sending an inspection delegation. They've detected the anomalous development patterns from their long-range scans. This isn't just a violation of the Directive. It's the most significant interference case in Council history." "We saved millions of lives," Elena replied steadily. "First from the earthquake, then from disease. Everything else came from the Luminians themselves. We just pointed them in positive directions." "The Council won't see it that way," Zhang warned. "They'll see a species advancing centuries ahead of their natural timeline. They'll see humans once again acting unilaterally, deciding we know better than everyone else." Elena couldn't argue with that assessment. Humanity's relationship with the Council had always been complicated. As the newest members of the galactic community, humans were often viewed as impulsive, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. This incident would only reinforce those perceptions. The Council delegation arrived 3 days later, representatives from 7 species, led by High Arbiter Zorax of the Meldari, known for their strict interpretation of Council law. "Captain Reyes," the Insectoid Arbiter chittered, compound eyes gleaming with what Elena interpreted as cold fury. "You stand accused of the highest crime in Council jurisdiction, deliberate contamination of a developing species' natural evolution. How do you plead?" Elena stood tall before the assembled delegates on the Horizon's bridge. Behind her stood her crew, not just the 12 who had remained on Lumina, but the entire complement of the ship, united, resolute. "I acknowledge our actions," she said clearly, "but I reject the premise that they constitute a crime. The Council's non-interference directive is based on the principle that developing species should be allowed to follow their natural course, but there is nothing natural about preventable mass death. Murmurs rippled through the delegation. Arbiter Zorax's antennae quivered with indignation. "You presume to interpret Council law according to your own moral framework," he demanded. "I presume to act with compassion when faced with suffering I have the power to prevent," Elena countered. "Humanity has learned through bitter experience that inaction in the face of catastrophe is not neutrality, it is complicity." The debate raged for hours, becoming increasingly philosophical. What constituted natural development? Was a tsunami that would kill millions truly part of an evolutionary path, or merely random chance? Did advanced species have a moral obligation to prevent suffering when they could do so without imposing their own values? In the midst of this heated exchange, an unexpected message arrived from the surface of Lumina. The message was simple but profound, a series of mathematical equations transmitted on a frequency the Luminians shouldn't have been able to access for decades. The equations described orbital mechanics with startling accuracy. "They know we're here," Kaido whispered, awestruck. "They've figured out not just that we came from beyond their world, but exactly where we are now." Arbiter Zorax was apoplectic. "This is precisely why the directive exists. You've accelerated their development to a dangerous degree." "With respect, Arbiter," Sophia interjected, "we taught them about clean water and basic medicine. We didn't teach them advanced mathematics or radio technology. They developed those independently." "Impossible," declared the Vox representative, a crystalline being who communicated through light pulses. "No species advances from pre-industrial to space awareness in 6 months without external influence." "Unless," Admiral Zhang said slowly, "that is their natural path. We assumed their development would mirror our own, gradual, incremental. But what if the Luminians are simply different?" A second transmission followed the first, this one containing not equations but art. A beautifully rendered image showing Luminians and humans standing together beneath twin suns, 4 arms and 2 arms intertwined in friendship. "They're reaching out," Elena said softly, "asking for formal contact. They know we're different and they're not afraid, they're grateful." The Council delegation fell into confused silence. This was unprecedented. Their protocols had no provisions for a species that leapfrogged development stages or that actively sought contact before achieving space flight. "Perhaps," suggested the Tellurian delegate, a being of living stone who spoke rarely but thoughtfully, "we have been too rigid in our thinking. The directive assumes all species follow similar developmental patterns. The Luminians challenge this assumption." "They challenge more than that," Elena said. "They challenge the idea that advanced societies must always develop through conflict, resource exploitation, and competition. The Luminians are building a different path, one based on cooperation, sustainability, and shared progress." Arbiter Zorax's compound eyes studied Elena for a long moment. "You believe your interference was justified because it helped them find this path." "I believe our assistance prevented a natural disaster from destroying their potential," Elena corrected. "What they've done with that potential is entirely their own achievement." The Council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they reached a compromise that satisfied no one completely but opened the door to a new approach. "The United Earth government will face sanctions for the unauthorized intervention," Arbiter Zorax announced. "However, in light of the unique circumstances and the unexpected outcomes, the Council has voted to establish a new classification for the Luminian civilization, Accelerated Development Protocol. This new protocol would allow limited, transparent contact with the Luminians, carefully monitored by a diverse Council team. The Luminians would be informed about the wider galactic community, but would develop at their own pace, with access to information but not advanced technology. Furthermore, the Arbiter continued, with what Elena could have sworn was reluctant admiration, the Council acknowledges that this incident has revealed flaws in our existing non-interference policy. A review committee will be formed to develop more nuanced guidelines that consider ethical imperatives alongside developmental concerns. It wasn't a complete vindication, but it was a start. As the Council delegation departed, Admiral Zhang turned to Elena with a mixture of exasperation and pride. You risked everything, your career, Earth standing in the Council, potentially even peace in the galaxy, because you couldn't stand by and watch suffering. Isn't that what makes us human? Elena asked simply. Zhang's weathered face softened. Perhaps it's what makes us worthy of the stars. 6 months later, Elena stood once again on the surface of Lumina, this time as the official Earth representative to the newly established Luminian Galactic Cultural Exchange. Around her, the coastal city had transformed. Clean energy systems powered advanced water filtration plants. Schools taught both traditional Luminian knowledge and new concepts from beyond their world. And in the central square, a monument had been erected, a sculpture showing 4-armed and 2-armed figures working together to hold up a stylized representation of their shared future. They call it the Compassionate Hand, Kaido explained as they admired the monument. In Luminian philosophy, the concept of reaching out to help others is sacred. They see our intervention not as interference but as an act of cosmic harmony. Elena watched as Luminian children played nearby, their quick minds already grasping concepts that had taken humanity centuries to develop. But they approached these ideas differently, not with humanity's drive to conquer and control, but with a deep-seated desire to connect and understand. Perhaps we needed them as much as they needed us, she reflected, to remind us why we reached for the stars in the first place. In the evening light, as Lumina's 3 moons rose above the horizon, Elena received a message from Earth. The Council had officially modified its non-interference directive. The new protocol, named the Reyes Principle, stated, "Advanced civilizations have not only the right but the responsibility to prevent mass suffering of sentient beings when they can do so without imposing cultural values or disrupting societal development." It was a small change in wording but a profound shift in philosophy. And as Elena looked up at the stars, now filled with new meaning for the Luminians, she felt a deep sense of vindication. Humanity's compassion, sometimes impulsive, often messy, occasionally reckless, had proven to be not a weakness in the galactic community, but a strength that even the oldest civilizations could learn from. The Luminians had a saying that had become popular since first contact. The universe gives many gifts, but the greatest is a hand extended in kindness. As Elena watched their world embrace its new future, she couldn't help but agree. Thank you for listening.